was finally Halloween weekend, and this year it fell on a Saturday. My mom, Jenny, always took Halloween decorations and giving out candy very seriously. She seemed to have an intense need to decorate more elaborately than all the neighbors and have the most sought-after house for trick-or-treating. We lived on a corner lot in a typical suburban neighborhood, so when we decorated for Halloween, we would also decorate the side of the house facing the cross street. Since Halloween was on a Saturday this year, kids started showing up to trick-or-treat earlier in the afternoon. However, it was an overcast, cold day, with rain in the forecast. For some reason, my mom didn't seem to grasp that the weather was likely a factor in the lower-than-usual turnout of trick-or-treaters. After only a handful of costumed kids came by, my mom assumed it must be because our house didn't have enough decorations up to attract more trick-or-treaters. She told me to go up to the attic and bring down whatever containers were left that had Halloween decorations in them. I tried telling her this wasn't necessary, but she insisted, practically forcing me to go up there. The attic door was located in the upstairs hallway, directly above my bedroom. I pulled the folding ladder down from the ceiling and climbed up into the musty attic space. We kept all the holiday decoration containers organized in specific areas, so I headed over to where the Halloween stuff was stacked. There were only a couple of containers left. I opened one to see what was inside, some string lights and a few odds and ends. I figured this would be good enough to appease my mom's obsession with more decorations. I started dragging the plastic bin toward the attic entrance, then carefully slid it down the ladder. As I was about to climb down, I thought I heard a cracking noise coming from the other side of the attic, like a piece of wood straining under too much weight. I looked over at the stacks of containers lined up along the far wall, but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Since it was an old attic, I figured the sound of wood creaking or snapping wasn't necessarily that abnormal. I climbed back down the ladder and brought the decorations downstairs. My mom and I proceeded to put out some additional lights and decorations in the front yard. It was very windy and felt like rain could start pouring down any minute. Just as I suspected, there were hardly any trick-or-treaters out that evening. My mom was really disappointed, not just because of the lack of kids coming by, but also because she always made up way too many of her homemade goodie bags filled with piles of different candies to hand out. I could see how upset she was that most of them were going to go to waste this year. As the day went on, I hung out in my bedroom playing video games on my laptop, while my mom sullenly handed out the occasional candy to the few trick-or-treaters brave enough to come by. Then it started raining steadily, which basically put an end to most of the trick-or-treating for the night. I was in my room engrossed in my game when I suddenly heard another crack from up in the attic above my bedroom. I made a mental note that this was the second time I'd heard an odd noise coming from that area, but I quickly became absorbed in my game again and dismissed it. The rest of the evening was rainy and eventually turned into a full-blown thunderstorm. Perfect ambiance for Halloween night. Since I was an avid gamer in my teens, instead of going out with friends on a Saturday night, I often chose to stay home playing video games. This particular night was no exception, unfortunately. I ended up staying awake into the early morning hours, well past when my parents had gone to bed. The rain was still steadily falling outside. At one point, I heard yet another strange noise from above me. This time, it sounded distinctly like footsteps. I wondered if my mom had gone up to the attic to put stuff away for some reason, but it was the middle of the night at this point. I stopped playing my game and listened closely. The footsteps seemed to move across the attic floor before stopping abruptly. I got up and quietly walked into the dark hallway. The attic door now appeared slightly ajar. After waiting silently for a couple minutes, I suddenly heard some loud banging noises coming from the first floor kitchen. It sounded like someone rummaging through the fridge and cabinets. My heart began racing uncontrollably. I tiptoed down to my parents' bedroom and carefully opened their door. I felt weak with relief when I saw them both sleeping soundly in their bed. I quietly latched the door and went over to my dad's side of the bed to gently shake him awake. He woke up quickly and I whispered urgently that there was someone in the house. He sat straight up looking alarmed as I explained, that I could hear someone in the kitchen raiding the fridge. I also told him about the noises from the attic. My dad was not a confrontational guy or intimidating in stature, but he did keep a police baton under his bed for emergency situations. I don't think he ever envisioned a scenario where he might actually need to use it, though. He told me to stay put and quiet. As he cautiously looked out into the dark hallway, he saw a shadowy figure clearly making their way back up the attic ladder. My dad quickly shut the bedroom door and locked it, then called 911. By now, my mom was awake too, but we all stayed silent, not wanting to provoke any reaction from the intruder. Now it was just a tense waiting game for the police to arrive. My dad eventually went downstairs to unlock the front door in preparation. When the police entered to sweep the house, they found a disheveled-looking homeless man hiding in the far corner of the attic behind some storage containers. The sounds I kept hearing were apparently from him the entire time. According to the police, the man was very cooperative and admitted he had simply walked in the front door that my mom had left unlocked the previous day. He confessed that he had no place to sleep and decided to hide out in our attic since it looked warm and dry. He had even brought up one of our blankets from the linen closet to use. The cops also discovered he had helped himself to a jar of peanut butter from the pantry, which explained the kitchen noises. Although the incident was incredibly unnerving, the man seemed more pathetic than dangerous. My parents opted not to press any charges against him. But needless to say, my mom learned to always keep the door locked after that fateful Halloween. As for me, I couldn't play video games late into the night for a long while without imagining I was hearing creaks and footsteps coming from the attic above my room. The whole experience made me wary of unlocking the attic door ever again. It was Halloween night, and I was hosting a party at my parents' house while they were out of town for the weekend. This was a big deal since my parents rarely let me have people over, let alone throw a full-blown party. But since I was now 18, they agreed I could have a small get-together as long as I followed their rules. No alcohol, no strangers, and the house had to be spotless when they returned. I invited about 50 of my closest friends, thinking around 30-40 would actually show up. I wanted a good crowd, but nothing too crazy that would trash the house. My friend Mike, who was 21, brought his DJ equipment to provide music. We set up in the backyard and first floor so people could flow between the two areas. Around 8 p.m. people started arriving. I stood by the front door to greet everyone, double-checking I knew each person. The last rule was no strangers. I wanted to honor my parents' trust in me. By 10 p.m., the party was in full swing with around 60 people dancing, talking, and laughing. Even though I said no alcohol, some friends had smuggled in beer and bottles of vodka and rum. I chose not to drink much, wanting to stay sober in case any issues arose, but everyone else was getting increasingly drunk as the night went on. Around midnight, my friend Rachel came running over looking worried. "Who's that guy in the skeleton costume inside?" she asked. I had no idea who she was talking about. I went inside to investigate and found a few people in the kitchen. "Did any of you see someone in a skeleton bodysuit?" I asked. They all shook their heads. No, except one girl who said, "Yeah, he was kinda just wandering around looking in rooms." Immediately, my heart dropped. A stranger at the party? I walked through the first floor looking for him. Finally, I saw him coming down the stairs. "Hey, who are you?" I called out. In a deep voice, he responded, "I'm Mike, just using the bathroom upstairs." Mike? I didn't know any Mike. I asked who invited him, but he just ignored me and brushed past towards the front door. I ran upstairs to check all the rooms and make sure nothing was stolen or damaged. Luckily, everything seemed untouched. Still, I was really shaken up. I locked the front door and told all my friends to be on alert for this stranger. No one had any idea who he was or who brought him. Over the next hour, people started leaving the party. By 2 a.m., it was just me and a couple close friends cleaning up red plastic cups and empty beer cans. My buddy Vinny was going to crash on the couch since he lived far away. After getting ready for bed, I went back downstairs to hang out with Vinny. We were watching funny YouTube videos and sipping the leftover vodka. Suddenly we heard creaking noises coming from upstairs. I assumed it was my younger sister going to the bathroom. But the noises continued, and I never heard a door open or close. Concerned, I went to check on my sister. She was sound asleep in her room. The noises weren't her at all. Then I realized my parents' bedroom door was slightly ajar. I knew I had closed it tightly before the party. Pushing it open, I scanned the dark room using the light from the hallway. That's when I saw him, the skeleton guy, standing in the corner by my dad's closet. I reeled back in shock but tried to stay calm. I quietly closed the door and rushed downstairs to get Vinny. "Dude, that guy is inside the house," I whisper yelled. Vinny immediately called 911 while I went to wake up my sister. I shuffled her downstairs where we met Vinny in the kitchen. The three of us slipped out the back door to the neighbor's house, who let us in to wait for police. Later, we realized the intruder had escaped out my parents' bedroom window. He had tried to break into my dad's safe where he kept valuables. It was clear he knew about the party and used it as a chance to sneak in and rob us. The police never found out who he was. I got in big trouble with my parents. My sister told them everything that happened. It was the last party I ever hosted at their house again. But looking back, I'm glad nothing worse happened. It still creeps me out to think some stranger was lurking around our house that night. I'll never know if it was someone I actually invited or a complete outsider. The mystery skeleton man of my 18th birthday bash will haunt me forever. It was Halloween night in 2016. I was 15 years old at the time, and this would be my last year going trick-or-treating. I wanted to make it a memorable night. My mom is pretty laid back, so she allowed me to turn it into a multi-day Halloween celebration. The day before Halloween, I had a sleepover with my friends Davis and Zach. We skipped school the next day so we could enjoy Halloween to the fullest. The plan was to go trick-or-treating with Davis and Zach, and then have another sleepover just with my girlfriend Amber. I was so excited to have an epic Halloween before I was too old for trick-or-treating. The night before Halloween, Davis, Zach, and I camped out in my freshly renovated basement man cave. My mom made us Halloween cookies, and then we headed downstairs, armed with scary movies. We started off by watching the original Scream movie. Around 11 p.m., after Scream ended, I put on Paranormal Activity, which none of us had seen before. I remember pausing the movie barely 30 seconds in because the motion sensor light in my backyard suddenly turned on, lighting up the whole room. I was annoyed because it ruined the creepy vibe. After the light turned off on its own after 30 seconds, I unpaused the movie. But then, 30 seconds later, the light turned on again. Davis asked what was making the light go on and off. I had no idea. After a third time, I was determined to figure out what was triggering it. Davis, Zach, and I went upstairs and looked out the back door, but by then the light had turned off again. We stood there for 5 minutes waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. We went back downstairs, turned off Paranormal Activity, and just hung out on our phones. A couple hours later, everyone was asleep except me. I was scrolling on my phone when the backyard light turned on for the 4th time. I was exhausted and assumed it was just pranksters messing with us, but it seemed odd, so I went to check one last time. Just as I expected, there was no one outside. Perplexed, I went back downstairs and finally fell asleep. The next evening on Halloween night, my bag was overflowing with candy. I felt a touch of sadness that this would be my last year trick-or-treating, but tried to just enjoy the night. I still had thoughts lingering about the strange occurrences the previous night. I wondered if I should mention it to Amber, but she was easily freaked out and I didn't want to ruin our night. We were nearing the end of our trick-or-treating route when Amber suddenly yelped in pain. She said someone had thrown a rock at her. I turned around to see a man in a clown mask lurking 15 feet behind us. This was during the creepy clown epidemic that was happening. I told the clown to go away, but he just stood there silently. I realized he looked like a full-grown man, not a kid. The only costume-like thing was the mask. The rest of his clothes were normal. We kept walking, but the clown just watched us go. Thoroughly creeped out, we decided to call it a night and skipped the last few houses. We went to my house so my friends could get picked up, and soon it was just Amber and I in the man cave with our candy haul. Amber asked if we could watch a movie, so I put Paranormal Activity back on to finally finish it. We got to the scene where the main character is searching for his missing girlfriend. Suddenly the screen went black and the dim lights in the cave turned off completely. The power had gone out. I checked the weather app. No storms or anything that would explain it. The power in my house had never gone out like that before. I told Amber to stay put, but she was scared of the dark basement. She came with me upstairs to investigate. The generator was in the backyard, which made my stomach drop thinking back to the night before. I slowly opened the back door, hearing nothing but crickets chirping in the dark. The motion light didn't turn on as we passed by it. As we approached the generator, I thought I heard a twig snap. Amber and I whipped our heads towards the dark tree line, feeling like we were being watched. I almost felt sick from fear. We hurried back inside, deciding we'd rather be in the blacked-out house than outside. But right as we reached the door, I saw him, the clown man lurking by my shed. He jumped out as if to scare us, then started sprinting towards us. I shoved Amber inside and slammed the door shut. We raced to the basement and hid behind the bar. That's when I realized the back door was unlocked the whole time. Then we heard the basement door open and heavy footsteps come downstairs. My girlfriend was breathing too loudly in her panic, so I covered her mouth. The footsteps slowly approached our hiding spot before stopping. I grabbed a beer bottle, preparing to fight if I had to. The room was silent for what felt like forever. Then we heard police sirens approaching outside, the perfect chance to run past him. In a split second, I burst out swinging the bottle at his head, but tripped and fell mid-swing. Looking up, I saw the clown mask staring down at me. I think his mask blocked some of the blow because he barely reacted. I realized attacking him was stupid with the police right outside. He seemed like he was about to flee upstairs anyway. As I scrambled to get up, the man gazed at me a moment longer before bolting up the stairs. We heard the back door slam again. I let the police in and told them the guy had run outside, but somehow he was never caught. To this day, I still feel anxious going in the man cave alone, remembering the terror of looking up at that clown mask as I flailed helplessly on the ground. We spent a lot more time hanging out at Amber's house after that. I'll never forget that Halloween night and how a childhood tradition ended with such vivid fear.